My name is Sapha Burnell. I perform as Usurperkings. Usurperkings is also the name of my first book, which you can see behind me here. I am the author of 3 books, editor of many, and today I am going to be reading yet another piece from my cyberpunk book, Neon Lieben. I'm currently working on the sequel to this bad boy. And I had picked a couple weeks ago, I had picked the section from chapter 29. And then the world kind of went a bit crazy, which I'm not going to go into. But I do feel like I need to preface the section that I already prepared with the fact that I'm married into a Ukrainian family. And so when I use Ukrainian culture in this book, it is from the perspective of somebody where that's how I live every day. So uh, this is going to be interesting, I think. So, where we are in the novel, we are about 3/4 of the way through, and the android Lieben has run away from her captors and ended up just at the mercy of this bookseller named Demian. And little does she know until a moment where she's going to wake up that she was brought specifically there by different algorithms because of a sense of safety. So we do just a little content warning here. Uh, Demian and Lieben do look at things in each other's, like Demian's past as a veteran, and then Lieben's past in something that happened to her. But basically, it's just two characters talking. So I hope you enjoy it.
Okay, great.
Here
I
we
think I've
go.
actually heard of. Did you read from this before?
Yeah, I've read from Neon Lieben quite a bit,
Yeah, I
mostly
thought
because it's
so.
my baby.
Yeah, it did sound familiar. Well, I look forward to hearing more. It was great last time.
Yeah. Yeah, and is it okay to do shout outs on here?
Sure. Go ahead.
So if you like what you hear, there is a sale going on March 6th through 12th on Smashwords. We can get the ebook for 25% off. So
Cool.
there we go. All right, hidden compartments. Once he was satisfied the conglom wasn't 3 steps from shoving their black-collared boots into the back of his brainstem, Demian returned to the flat above his store. Each sphere of holographic light hovered around his forehead like a halo of electric globes tethered to the cuff. The chair across from Lieben's couch, however worn and tattered, was comfortable enough for Demian. Arm perched above her head and across her eyes, Lieben laid like a woman exhausted from the sun. How did they make you? Was it learned behavior or programmed? What kind of programmer took the time to tack on humanoid sleep movements in a machine? Elbows on his knees, Demian observed the way her face fluctuated in minor twitches and burbles. While the Idlis saw Lieben as a herald of their new creation, Demian saw life through a much more dire lens of threat and awareness. The humanoid twitches, artifice of a life form. Where would Karnak have stopped? One of the globes unfolded into a rectangular screen, the interior of a cafe in East London. Ego hunched over a laminate table, a plate of half-eaten baklava and almond cookies beside 2 cups of Turkish coffee. The bundle slumped in his hoodie looked like Sophia. A portion of her uncovered face twitched and burbled. Damien stroked the screen. Farouk. Farouk Kambajian. 2 more of the globes whooshed to life. One scanned data on any Farouk Kambajian matching the description and demographic of the man he only knew as Ego. For all the good it'll do. Elbows propped on his knees, Demian watched one of his hologram orbs shift to Lieben's body, encircle her brow. You must have some form of connection to Sophia. The jewel, maybe? Karnak Research Data Storage, is that it? Ugh. I'm talking to a machine. He rose with a grumble and padded off to his small kitchen to pour another cup of tea and stopped short of the teapot. Above the red laminate cabinets in a scuffed hidden cubby, Demian pulled down a bottle of Canadian rye whiskey and splashed 2 fingers in a chipped tumbler. He corked the whiskey and shoved it back up, slapped the cubby's interior hinge closed. Never allow others to see what one loves, his uncle said from the shitty apartment. Weekends with Uncle Hike gave more than a break to his poor overloaded mother. He toyed with the veteran's old military hardware like other boys played football. Nemean waved his hand and 3 more of his globes encircled Lieben's head. 2 flitted down her body, settled near the ample bosom. A flick of his fingers opened all 3 orbs, data scans executed, as another orb opened to a parallel wavelength of the scan he gleaned from Sophia. Eh? A sip of whiskey burned down his throat, mouth tanged with smoke. Sophia's wavelength jittered and bucked, a lonely heartbeat struck by a disco. The wavelength from Lieben took on a familiar set of jitters, a contra rhythm. Pinched fingers widened and the screen widened, added separate measures, mean temperatures, network pings. Lieben's neck shifted, her head turned on the pillow. Sophia's head lolled against the wall in the cafe's surveillance feed. The ceiling cascaded with hundreds of pale beige and yellow stars. The more Demian saw, the more stars generated on the dirt white paint. Instead of roads, each light appeared to be a Neo unit, residential areas and shops. Scotland Yard, commercial districts, rows of lights suspended in racks. Beige light pulsed green, then turned the same pale yellow in a wave. Color ascending in a nebula he wondered how many others saw in the same kaleidoscopic way. Demian stepped back, set the whiskey on a side table made out of an old record turntable with 3 rescued chair legs. Is this London? A flash of purple neon trailed from his bookstore in the center to a web of streets further off, all the way to a building with masses of pale yellow lights. If you are finished with the whiskey, I would benefit from some. Christus! Demian staggered back, hand to his pocket. No, mine. Lieben's eyes opened. The amethyst of their constructed irises flowed gentle upon him, then up to the sea of stars. My babies, what happened? Are they all stupid and inefficient? May I have the whiskey, please? The android sat up, crossed her ankles, and paused halfway from dusting off her dress. Grime from London streets tended not to be kind to silk. You want the whiskey? Demian shifted his hand off his pocket. Yes, please, and soap, if you would not terribly mind. Lieben stood with her hands cupped one inside the other, as if the stars above her might fall at any moment and require a birth. One does not live for 8 years under the protection of Lord Stanley Hallows without procuring a delicate enjoyment of whiskey. It's one of his essentials. Protection? He was protecting you, was he? Demian grit his teeth and eased to the small kitchen without taking his eyes off the android. Are you afraid I might leap upon you, Demian Anastas? You know my name. Demian's eyes flicked to the globes, which began to curve round them both in a figure 8, around one head then the other, as if in a circuit or a binary star system. Are you hacking me? It's only polite for a gentleman to allow a lady a peek after he so gregariously scanned her. In her reset mode, I might ask. She tisked the way Lord Stanley did when he was mildly annoyed or feigned so. Don't worry, Demian, I won't murder the man who brings me whiskey. If you'll pardon me. Whether a trick of the strange night or an auditory wobble, Lieben's voice pitched softer to Demian's ears. She padded barefoot to the washroom, shut the door as the lights glowed with her proximity. Demian grabbed his whiskey and downed it in a single shot. He nudged the cubby open, poured himself another glass, and one for the self-professed lady. The idea of artificial intelligence inspired too much of Demian's life. He thought he could be a shadow crusader in the transhumanist community, build a small, slightly nefarious empire in London, Manchester, maybe branch out to Dublin or Edinburgh. When one dealt in black market code and cryptocurrency, groups like the Idlis knocked with bundles of paper money in hopes to circumvent the massive corporations and their pull. Those beneficial byproducts of industry became the new aristocracy, and he, a crusader for the common human, would allow everyone to feast upon the healthcare, education, and resources of those living in the conglomerate, the syndicate, and the cooperative union. While his tech made him contact for the search for Lieben, it was the hope of gleaning Karnak's genius from the machine which kept his active involvement the last 4 years. A high society lady in a gaudily expensive purple dress, jewels on wrist neckline, and silicone earlobe, who woke up mid-scan to cries of whiskey and soap, was nothing like the otherworldly intelligence Demian envisioned. Lieben, or Mina as she called herself, had a goddamn human name. She asked for soap and smoothed her dress. Why would an ultra intelligent sapient computer care what she wore? How did Lieben find her way to his door? Was she connected to Sophia? The gemstone on Sophia's chest? But then why didn't Lieben go to her across town? When the shower turned on, Demian's hand snapped up. I will require a towel! Lieben shouted from the shower as the globes of Demian's computational star system floated, as if pitted with water from afar. London is filthy! How do humans manage in a city with so many malicious microbes? The country is much more sanitary. Oi! I love London! Be comforted by your ignorance and purchase antibacterial soap. Why does your soap smell like fir trees? Is it a mating ritual? What's wrong with I'm getting value judged by a computer. Demian growled and sipped more of his whiskey, flicked open two of the hologram globes to monitor the London scene. The hiss of water from the shower ended with the squeal of the one rusted pipe he'd always meant to fiddle into submission. I require clothing. The silicone of my skin is liable to be harmed should I walk around naked. She walked naked into his bedroom, stepped to the bundle of clean clothes in a fabric laundry bag on the floor, and began rooting around. Uh, go ahead. A soft bamboo band tee, this one from a Norwegian anarchist heavy metal group, with an operatic soloist in full traditional garb and a pair of jeans worn gray over time. Full breasts and pink nipples pressed against the t-shirt. Demian momentarily lost focus on the existential crisis of higher technological progress, and lost his disappointment at the human quality of Karnak's machine. You look at me differently. Hmm? Lord Stanley never looks at me like that. What is it? That look on your face. Diffused light from the window cascaded around ivory thighs, bespeckled with hand-painted freckles. Lieben stopped after she pulled on a pair of Demian's boxers. They'd do until she could source better undergarments for herself. Life was a holding pattern until she allowed the compilation of information from the party to soothe the incongruous ideals of her solitary existence at the manor. I'm not used to a well-crafted android naked in my flat. Then putting on my clothes. I'm only a man. Lord Stanley is only a man. Maybe he's not that kind of man. The hollow-projected globes continued to encircle their heads. Two settled in front of Demian's shoulders, unfurled and listed information. Hell. Demian Anastas, Ukrainian national in London, 7 years. Lapsed visa. Demian glared at the intel. Another globe joined the middle. His fists worked in and out of a clench. Detailed reports on his military campaigns flowed with medical reports from child doctors. Familial squabbles, social media posts, things deleted or thought to be expunged from the global cyber market, as if traces of his past were anathema to the man before the machine. Simultaneous globes unfurled in front of Lieben's shoulders, wavelength and connectivity scans, chemical makeup, history, location tracking, data from the original release. Lieben's eyelids opened, lips quivered with an unspoken words of shame. The same shame, a rescuer who failed. He stared, learned one about the other. The remaining crown of globes unfurled, displayed surveillance vids from Demian's chest cam. A mess of war. Soldiers rushed through dilapidated buildings, the crunch of sand at their camouflage boots. Vocals were unnecessary as screams in other tongues filled the night. The world exploded in fire. Demian's chest cam dove, assault rifle riddled the air with suppression bullets. A yellow light laser burst across the concrete bricks Demian used for cover. One of his squad mates gurgled and toppled in 3 pieces, arm and torso with a precise diagonal through his liver down past his hip. Stop. Shut it off. Demian's voice gelled in his throat, the vision of his military career a mirror image in front of his eyes. O is for apples. Lieben's clunky voice chattered out of the debut footage, an android stuck in the horrible stasis of the void necklace. T is for The presentation room erupted, cameras flashed as humanity gawked and laughed at the stuck machine. You first. Shut mine off first. Lieben's voice rang like birdsong between them. You wanted to know everything you could about Konak's machine, Captain Demian Anastas. recipient of the Defender of Ukraine medal. Stop. It is only polite I open your life, your inner workings, if you want to know mine. The military campaign went on. Daybreak scattered the gray gloom with peppers of orange sun. Demian scuffled to hoist a squadmate behind another barrier, yank a handkerchief from his pocket and thrust it into the man's wound, pistol raised to shoot down the drone, which recalculated its rate of fire. You dig into everyone else's. I don't want to see any more. Don't you? Then shut mine off. Or do you not want me to see more of you? Demian. Captain Demian Anastas. Recipient of the Stop Calling Me That. The surveillance footage of the debut faded to an elevator, Karnak's anemic grin, and Tara with the gun. No overhead shot. It was her eyes. Lieben's eyes bathed the elevator in its horrors. Sophia, with shorter hair and no illuminated tattoos, reached for the elevator buttons. Tara pointed the gun at Dieter Karnak. Demian's eyebrows furrowed. He would know. He would know the truth people suspected but had no evidence to confirm. 8 years ago, a bullet ended the world's greatest authority on artificial intelligence, and the answer to the crime was within the palm of his hand. He needed only reach, continue to watch. But the price became a piece of freedom he refused to all in the web of his life, to know and be known, to allow the machine to see him, the officer who lost his troops in a battle of attrition, the man who covered wounds with a handkerchief, medical supplies exhausted, and held his dying compatriots. My way is not easy, Demian. I take and I give. You can know all, or you can know nothing more of me. You hold the choice. A man in the footage gurgled. Hand fumbled against his chest plate. Clumsy fingers found no purchase. Demian's back bowed. His shoulders fell as he watched his second in command fumble against his chest in what was little more than a festering hole. It stank. The pictures give you none of the smell. The rot in the hull was the only thing capable of staving off the drones. It was too narrow for them to get down. He stomped to the kitchen, grabbed both glasses of whiskey, and handed one to Lieben. NATO's maps were corrupted by enemy hackers. They send reinforcements to the wrong place. I lost my entire squad, one by one, to the drones. It didn't matter they fired on civilians, the people whose flag was painted on their casings. When the bullets were exhausted, they continued with laser fire. Yvonne's wounds festered. You cannot imagine the smell. Your companion dying on your back. No, I cannot imagine it. Imagination is beyond me in your way. And you cannot imagine being locked in your body, aware but incapable of motion, by humans who either desired evil or wealth. You have not stood powerless before a simple firearm. You had a gun and a trigger. Lieben's hand folded over the whiskey glass as she sipped it, let the abrasive liquid claim and disinfect her throat from London's muck. You and I have pains, Demian Anastas, different and obscene. I did not come to allow those pains to eat what is left of us. They say they are yours. One of the screens shifted to a green telephone symbol. A man's voice, thick with an Armenian accent, shifted in the air. A cafe interior where Ego sat protective of Sophia. Lehman tilted her head. The fields of intel on Demian Anastas shifted to Farouk Kambajian, by Kokaho, known as Sophia. A void in the scans pinpointed shadows in Sophia's pocket. Demian's globes of Sophia's scans rushed to overlay Lieben's screen. Lieben's face bristled at the void of the necklace. The outlines of each holographic screen turned black and red in warning. Demian cocked his head to the side. Do you want to see Sophia? The words emanated from another orb, unfolded before Lieben's eyes alone. Lieben shook her head. With a snort, Demian grumbled in muddy Ukrainian and sneered. Send them to Kaurus, like I told you. On the surveillance cam, Ego jolted. Of course. Ari would forget and put it on speakerphone. Is is that Demian? Fuck, Demian! We need you. No, we come to you. Ari held his hand to settle Ego as he stood over Sophia Baiko's face. slid away. Her deep brown eyes peered directly at the hidden surveillance camera. You want to sleep on the floor, come to my place. Calry has secure room and board in back of his tea shop. Go there, clean the fuck up. He'll give you new clothes we can convene in morning. No, take us to the bookstore. Amethyst eyes met brown. A spark radiated from the real-time surveillance image and Lieben's android form. She has the necklace. I will not see her until it is properly away. Lieben's words typed themselves on Demian's unfolded holographic screen. He growled and shook his head. Ari, take them to Calru's or throw them in the alley. I am not losing a second safe haven in one night. He swept his hand and the screen disappeared. The audio ended with a finite. What does the necklace do? Demian walked away from Lieben, leaned against his kitchen counter to watch the road outside his dwelling. The globes of his holographic computer chased on a slow circuit around both their heads. Lieben came beside the man as mighty and vulnerable as herself, allowed one of the globes to unfurl and show him. Demian's eyes widened. He hugged his whiskey against his arm, caught between the data and the machine. I'll see to it Kaoru uses a lockbox for their things. When we go see them. And why would I see them? Who are they to me? They've been seeking you out for 8 years. I assumed. Damien's face contorted in a mask of twisted lines, furrowed further at the addition of a birdsong laugh. You found me. How did you find me if you were not trying to find them? I panicked. A machine panics. Not what I figured, Quantum Miss. What else can I call it? Baiko's proximity and my connection to the secure network, it overloaded your neural net? The whiskey set his throat aflames. Globes reopened, searched, and collated research data at flicks of his fingers. Quantum computing systems, stressors in neural circuitry. Still, the amount of data Lieben was clearly capable of processing was better than phenomenal. It blew every system Demian was aware of into the realms of childishness. But how did Karnak do it? What level of informational dump could send such an overwhelming machine into tertiary functions? Why send Lieben to his door? A door she didn't even know. The original scans he took of Lieben combined in his mind with Sophia's. Their wavelengths seemed familiar, but was that a form of imitation based on similitude? A form of computational symmetry built into their dichotic system? He covered a yawn. 3 a.m. wasn't early or late enough for so tangled a tapestry. So you ran on secondary programming, but why would it lead you? The dark of London's night seeped through with the shadow of a floating orb lamp, which bobbed in the wind, tethered by a magnetic string to the side of Demian's building. Silicone cheeks took no color like a real girl, nor did Lieben give any outward facial tell. You didn't know if you'd survive seeing Sophia again. Her name is Baiko, like yours is Mina. Demian pointed his tumbler at her, punctuated by the emptiness of the glass. Nothing left to slosh around which wasn't an inebriant in and of itself. Mina, the gem on Sophia's chest. It was a gift from Karnak, wasn't it? Certainty is not 100%, but it's highly likely the gemstone is from Karnak. Demian tugged another globe out of the air, expanded an image on a loop of Sophia and the houseboat. He ignored the way his arm curled around Sophia's waist,